I think he started the party out of sheer spite. He thought he was a big noise in reform before Nigel fired him. And I think this is just his revenge because he knows what's going to happen come the election. This is going to split the reform vote. A lot of people are going to vote for Rupert and not for Nigel. I mean, he's saying silly things. He's saying things like that Restore Britain is polling at 10% at the moment. It's tosh. So these policies, you can drive a truck through them. He's a dangerous man. We've got to stop pussyfooting around this thing. And Farage is sort of laughing at that now.
Hello and welcome to the Daily Expresso. I'm Steph, Spyro, and I'm delighted to be joined in a studio by Carole Malone.
Hello, you look nothing like JJ.
I transformed.
And you're nowhere near as rude.
Well,
we haven't started yet.
No, well, the episode is young. JJ's not feeling well today, but he should be back in the seat.
He's a
tomorrow.
big baby.
Shame.
He's just a big baby. He's always ill.
Oh, goodness. Well, we'll dive straight into it, Carole. Starting off with Reform versus Rupert Lowe. This week, Rupert Lowe, obviously the former Reform MP, has announced that he will be launching his party, Restore Britain. How do you think that will play into Reform's hands? What does that mean for Reform?
I think he started the party out of sheer spite. He thought he was a big noise in Reform before Nigel fired him. And I think this is just his revenge because he knows what's going to happen come the election. He has a very big following on Twitter, and he knows that come the election, this is going to split the Reform vote. A lot of people are going to vote for Rupert and not for Nigel. He's saying silly things. He's saying things like that Restore Britain is polling at 10% at the moment. I mean, it's tosh.
Above the Lib Dems, I think he said.
That's in a poll that was commissioned by, guess who, Restore Britain. And Farage is sort of laughing at that now and saying that he said actually this polling may be coming out today, which will show that Lowe is not more than 1% anywhere. But it's interesting today, isn't it, that Farage has announced the party. He announced it yesterday, but it's in all the papers today. And I've just been talking about it to some other politicians today, and they're saying it's just a load of tired old Tories. But I don't know where else they expect people to come from. You're not going to get anybody from Labour going to Reform. You're not going to get anybody from the Greens going to Reform. So it has to be Tories. And I think that it's funny with Farage. He can't win because if he brought on a whole load of unknowns to the stage, people would have said, they've got no experience, they're hopeless, whatever. So you bring on a lot of seasoned politicians from the Tories and they go, they're dead old Tories, they've all been fired, they're no use. But that's simply not true, actually. I think the people that he had on that stage today, I think Suella resonates with a lot of people, and I think Robert Jenrick certainly does. And Farage does, he said today, didn't he, that he can no longer be regarded as a one-man band. And I was just watching him today. There's a lot of people are not going to give him the benefit of the doubt. But, I don't think there's any other political leader like him around currently. I think it's fair to say he's probably the most influential politician of the last 50 years, and that's even when he didn't have a parliamentary seat. I mean, he made Brexit happen. He made this government turn around this week on the elections. 4.6 million people now have a vote, thanks to Nigel Farage and Reform. And make no mistake that if Farage hadn't been going to challenge him in the High Court, the hearing should have been today, those elections would have stayed cancelled, even though the government is now being urged to publish the guidance it had from lawyers, which I'm pretty sure would have said it was going to be illegal, and I'm pretty sure it would have said that weeks ago when they first mooted this idea. And even if it hadn't, let's face it, Starmer is an MP. He's a former boss of the CPS, and you would have thought he might have made a cursory check to see if this was legal. You would have thought maybe that even Lord Harmer, our esteemed Attorney General, who's also a top lawyer, might have made a cursory check on whether or not this was legal. I think they knew it wasn't. I think they always knew it wasn't. But they just thought they'd chance their arm anyway. And now they've been made to look foolish. It would be interesting to look at, Steph, what pieces of governance that this government put in place have actually stayed the course? Because this is the 14th U-turn. There will be more, and the thing is, Starmer does it not because he's trying to do the right thing or because he thinks he's done the wrong thing. He's doing it to save his sorry backside. And it just makes the government look foolish. This is the man who tried to steal the vote of 4.6 million people, and they will pay him back for that come May the 7th.
Absolutely. And I think we'll loop to local elections and Steve Reid in a minute.
Yes.
I quickly want to ask you on reform. And as you said there, Farage says that he needs people with cabinet experience and he's aware of that and that's how he defends himself. Very often in previous parties he's had, there's been a lot of infighting or there's been accusations levelled at Farage and his parties about a lack of professionalism. Do you see that potentially playing out here too with the personalities?
Well, yeah, but look at any party currently now. The Tories have been fighting for the past 10 years. That's what led to their demise. Labour now, there's infighting everywhere. There's so many factions in the Labour Party, I've lost count, and they're all at war with each other. So, yes, this is a brand new party, and it is a party of no government experience. And so, I don't expect reform to be brilliant. I don't expect them to be even great. But I think what I feel and what a lot of people in this country feel, we want a revolution. I want everything that is now to be thrown out. I want everything of the past 20 years with the Tories and with Labour to be thrown out. And I want to get a government in charge that is brave, that actually, and that listens to the British people. And that's been the problem, Reform is seen now as anti-establishment, in the sense that the establishment has not listened to the electorate for the last 20 years, not on immigration, not on our broken asylum system, not on the economy, not on anything. And especially this Labour Party, this is supposed to be the party of the working classes, the working people. They despise working people. They only like people who don't work. So I think the thing with reform is it's seen as anti-establishment. And yes, it doesn't have the experience. Yes, it's having to take people from the Tories, but let's face it, it's not going to take people from the Greens. The Greens aren't going to migrate there, so that's not going to happen. And he needs to have some big beasts in his cabinet, and I think he does have those now. And I love the fact that Jenrick is going to be. And the other thing that about that cabinet, they've all Tice and Jenrick, they've all been in business before. Farage has run small businesses for years. Zia Youssef is a multimillionaire businessman. Tice is a multimillionaire. So they understand business in a way that this Labour Party never, ever will.
Because I don't think there is that business ownership experience in the cabinet.
Labour have been around for years, but our cabinet is devoid of experience, of any kind of real experience. And all of these people who are in his cabinet have done things before they came into politics, which I don't think is a bad thing. I think voters will see it as a good thing.
And I think the repercussions of that lack of business experience with Labour is seen in the unemployment figures, which came out yesterday at 5.2%. That is 1.88 million people out of a job.
Yes, and it's. I think they've lost something like 135,000 jobs since they came in. They've just gone by the wayside, paid jobs. We have more people on benefits now than ever before. 6.3 million people on out of work benefits, 1.3 million young people between 16 and 24 on benefits because of their mood and their anxiety.
And Reform has said today, their big policy announcements, Jenrick's first as Shadow Chancellor, that they will restore the two-child benefit cap in full, end spurious mental health claims that's going to be axed, clinical diagnosis will be required, and an end to mobility abuse and migrant welfare.
That's what we all want to hear. We want to hear that. We want to hear a government that is going to take that welfare bill, which is going to be 100 billion quid in the very near future. We need, we've got to stop pussyfooting around this thing that everyone who is on benefits needs it or deserves it. There are lots of scammers out there. You can go now, you can get yourself a sick note, and you can just go and live on that sick note for years. No one comes and checks. No one. There was a time years ago when you went to the job centre every week and you had to sign on, as it were. You don't have to do that anymore. And we have to do that. We have to look at. We can't assume that every young person has a mental health issue, and yet that's what we're doing. There's talk today. Labour are going to spend something like, I can't remember how many million, but millions anyway, on 16 to 24-year-olds who are suffering mental health problems. Being frightened of work is not a sickness. It's not an illness. I would rather say any money from the NHS going to people who have cancer, going to people who have heart disease, pay for their operations. We shouldn't be lavishing even more money on out-of-work young people who are not going to work because they're frightened or anxious of work. They have to get over that. I don't know how it happens, but it shouldn't be the NHS footing the bill for that.
Well, and coming up, millions of more people will be able to use their voices in local elections, as you touched on earlier.
I so hope, I mean, the thing about Starmer is these U-turns, I don't know what he imagines that they do to all of us out there who are watching. And all it makes you realise is that he can't make a decision on anything, not on anything. And that nothing he says or does is of any use to anyone. And I just think we look at him now when we just say, in the local elections now, even people who had been dithering about whether or not to vote Labour or Tory or thing, now they're not going to vote Labour because he tried to take their vote. And there are some councils, I think it was the Electoral Commission the other day, said that there are some councils that haven't had elections since 2021. I mean, that's outrageous. These councils, they double our council tax. And then they actually stop doing their job. They don't give us the amenities we need, but then they try to take our vote away so we can't vote them out. And that's what happens in banana republics. It should not happen in a democratic Britain. And at least in banana republics, the leaders in charge of those republics actually are horrible and do it properly. They really subjugate their people. Starmer can't even do that right. He just gets everything wrong all of the time. And it's...
So Keir Starmer is just about clinging on. But there have been calls for Steve Reid, who's the cabinet secretary in charge of this brief, to resign.
Yes.
What are your thoughts on him?
Yes, there's a huge pressure on Steve Reid to resign. And maybe he'll have to, because Starmer's always got to find somebody to blame for something, so maybe it'll be Steve Reid. He's the man who very recently called local elections pointless. Now, that tells me that him and Labour do not understand what's happening in this country, because this is the I think Farage said it this week. This is the vital link. Local elections. There's the vital link between the public and power. Absolutely. It is the only way the public can make government answerable and their council answerable. And the fact that Steve Reid didn't see that, but more importantly, this is a guy who, whenever he's interviewed on telly, always gets cross when people pull him up on stuff. But what he has done by forcing these through, now taxpayers, all of us, are going to have to fork out 63 million quid because there's going to be a race against time to get these elections to go ahead. Council were basking in the fact it wasn't going to happen, they were going to save a bit of money, whatever. Now they have to... So we are, yet again, the British voting public are going to pay the price for this government's incompetency. And also they're having to pay for reforms legal fees, which I'm very glad about. It would just be interesting to know, wouldn't it, Steph, when this government knew, when they had been advised that cancelling these local elections were illegal. Say, it is amazing to me, it's astonishing. It would be incredible if Starmer didn't know or if he hadn't checked. And I just don't think he can blame anyone for this. But the fact that all of these people now are going to be given the vote, we are now going to find out about what they think about Keir Starmer, and it's not going to be good. I think it'll be a wipeout come the local elections, and bigger than it would have been, actually.
It's going to be a really interesting litmus test. But I think your last point there on the advice the Prime Minister is receiving is fascinating. Ultimately, the buck does stop with him. Completely. He is Prime Minister. Completely. But what is going wrong in the people that surrounds him to end up with the number of U-turns that we have ended up with?
I think he's not on his brief. I think that's part of the problem. I think he's had an army of advisors. They've all gone now. I think it doesn't matter what they tell you. You have to have a feel for leading, and he has no feel for anything. So he gets
political
presented.
Judgment as well.
Yes, he has no judgment at all. And so when someone tells him something, because he's busy probably trying to plan his next trip abroad onto the global stage to strut across that, he's not looking at what's happening in this country. Plus, I think the thing about Farage and him, Starmer is not relatable. He's a wooden character. He can't connect to people. So maybe he doesn't connect to advisors, but he certainly doesn't have his finger on the pulse of what the people of this country think about what they feel and what they need. And that's opposed to Farage because, Farage is the bloke in the pub. He's the astute businessman. He's the guy, he's the Pied Piper. I've watched Farage in action and I've watched him go on to really hardcore council estates where he's knocking on the doors of guys who are, invests and having a fag. They invite him in, they adore him. I've seen him with middle to upper class people. I've seen the way he talks to them. He straddles all of the classes, I think, Farage. And Starmer and his Labour cabinet do not. And I think it's a massive problem for them.
And based on that then, do you actually see the Greens leader, Zach Polanski, as a really immediate danger to Starmer in the sense that a lot of people say he's got personality, he engages on videos?
He so hasn't.
You disagree? Okay.
Well, I've met him now a couple of times and he talks nonsense. His policies, you could drive a truck through them. He's a dangerous man, I think, Polanski. And I think he's not a very well-informed man. And I think the reason the Greens are getting lots of votes now, in the polls, they're kind of, close to Labour, is because it's disaffected Labour people who don't want to go right, who don't want to go to Reform or the Tories. And they're going to Polanski. But I mean, the Greens, if they got any power, would be catastrophic. I mean, one of Polanski's policies, he wants to legalise all drugs, heroin, crack, all of that. Just give them to everyone, and he's naive enough to think that there won't be any black market if you legalise something. It's tosh, we have a black market in cigarettes, we have a black market in alcohol. They're all legal. They're all supposed to be monitored. They're not. So I think he's a dangerous man. I think
the factionalism of UK politics is fascinating and will be a very interesting few years ahead.
I think so.
As we near towards the general election, whether that is next year or 2029.
Well, Farage seems to think it's next year.
He does. He's adamant.
Why does he think that? The only way we could have that, I think, is if there's a financial meltdown, isn't it? I mean, and none of us want that. But he seems pretty certain.
Dead set on that. Well, unless after the May elections, Starmer goes,
yes,
someone comes in, they don't have a mandate with the country.
Yes.
And then there's just more chaos.
But how could that happen? How would that trigger an election? Do you know? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I guess, would the MPs not have to call a vote of no confidence? And then would that trigger?
But they're not going to do that next year. Say if they bring Rayner in or whoever. Oh my God, two terrifying words. But they're going to have to give her a year, aren't they, to cock it up even more. So I mean, that's how I don't see it can be next year. So I kind of hope he's right. I hope Farage is right. But then I'm not entirely sure Reform will be ready for government this time next year.
Well, Farage seems to know that the clock is ticking. He made that point a lot yesterday, so time will tell.
He looks confident, actually.
He does.
And yeah, he does.
Slightly moving away from the Palace of Westminster and over to Andrew, it looks like 7 police forces, at least, are investigating links with Epstein. Stansted, the airport's come under some scrutiny over allegations that Epstein was using the airport's private terminal to jet in and jet out from.
The Lolita Express, they're calling it.
That's it, exactly.
That's what you've just got to love the media.
But Andrew's in big trouble here.
I think he's in massive trouble. I don't think he's in any more trouble re the sex trafficking than he was before, because that accusation has been made that a Russian girl was brought over here and went to Royal Lodge and then was taken on a tour of Buckingham Palace. We know that happened. But they're talking something like 90 flights between the years, between the 90s and between 2018. But it's interesting. Everyone's kind of screaming on the hind legs now, as is Gordon Brown, and saying this has to be investigated. But, when you have a businessman like Epstein coming in on a regular basis and bringing girls young enough to be his grandchildren in, glamorous, young, gorgeous girls, did nobody back then think, well, this is a bit weird? It's all very well now having hindsight and saying, oh, this is terrible and this has been happening. they must have known about this at the time.
And also, the thing is, Carole, the thing that always gets me is they would have had security. There
course.
would have been police around.
Of course.
There would have been people who should have known better and would have known better, but failed to act.
And they've all just got, hindsight now. It's a wonderful thing, hindsight. But I think the thing that is also very dangerous for him is the fact that when he was the trade envoy, he was passing confidential information to Epstein. Now, if that is found to be true, he's in big trouble. Now, I remember when he was trade envoy, and I used to report on a lot of stories about this, we were all saying at the time, this job is making him rich because he was spending lots of money on housing. He was getting gifts from dodgy despots. And we were all saying, how does a man who gets a small amount of money from the civil list have the stuff that he has? And we couldn't follow through. And it's interesting why we couldn't say what we felt was happening, that he was swapping information and was being rewarded for it. We couldn't say it because back then you couldn't suggest that any member of the monarchy could do that or would do that. And this just shows how times have changed, just like in a decade and a bit, that we can say that now. A few years ago, it's inconceivable that Andrew would have been accused of all this publicly, but here we are where he is. So, and I mean, you got Hillary Clinton in the papers today saying, he should go to America and he should give evidence. But I am pretty sure the royal family will not allow that. I mean, we saw what he did in the interview with Emily Maitlis and the pig's ear he made of that and how he lied in that and caused huge headaches for the monarchy and everyone else. I think it's highly unlikely they will allow him to go. I mean, in America now, they're saying that if he fears that he's going to get arrested when he goes there, they will guarantee him safe passage. But he's not going to tell the truth about this. He's just not. And whatever he says is likely to cause an international incident. So it's probably better he's kept wherever he is living. I don't quite know where he is now. He's out of Roy Lodge and in between his new house. So, he is in trouble over this. Who knows whether the files, he's always maintained he did nothing wrong. He's always maintained there was never a sexual relationship with Virginia Giuffre. But, who knows what's left to come out here.
Well, Carole, speaking of another kind of royalty, social media influencers are taking over restaurants, and the Ivy restaurant chain boss says he is sick of influencers coming to his restaurant and taking photos.
He's quite right. This is a guy called Jeremy King, and he's furious because when you hear what's happening, he says these influencers are coming into his restaurant with suitcases and with flashlights and with stand-up, these things on tripods, and they're setting up, he said, and they're draping themselves across the stairs in his restaurant where people are trying to get the loo and whatever, and they're just disrupting his restaurant. Now, I get it. I've taken the odd photo of a restaurant.
Sure, we all have, I'm
for
sure.
a mate. I've done it a couple of times because a friend's got a restaurant and then she opened another one. So I've kind of done it for her to lend a helping hand. But I do find it bizarre that we're now in the situation where people just can't eat anything unless they've taken a photograph of it first. And you don't even have to be an influencer to do that. I see people in restaurants doing it all the time. Do they ever look at that photograph again when they've got out of the restaurant? Do they go home and go, oh, that's what I had? I don't think so. But Richard is right. And it's interesting that there's one restaurant in Mayfair, Punk Royale it's called. So you go to the restaurant and you have to leave your phones in a basket at the door. Now, I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that because we work, stories break, we need to know what's going on.
Absolutely.
Could get a message from home, from your kids, whatever. So, I think that's a little step too far. It's a little bit authoritarian. But and Gordon Ramsay tried to do it in his restaurants. He tried to ban phones in his restaurants, but he said he's reinstated them because they're actually quite good for business if people are posting decent stuff. Catastrophic if they're not.
Yes.
But if you're an influencer and you're in a restaurant and you're taking all these shots, what that means is you're getting other diners. They're in the background. They don't want that.
It's quite invasive.
Yeah, I don't want my picture taken when I'm shoveling mashed potato into my mouth. I don't want that going on, right? Who does? It's intrusive. And this... The Ivy guy is quite right to call it out.
And I'm sure many restaurants across the country will feel the same. But thank you so much, Carole, for joining us in studio. And thank you so much to you for joining us at home. Please do like and subscribe if you haven't already. And we will be back tomorrow.